What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're out in the garage today working on the Mark V Jetta. Today we are doing new front wheel hub bearing assemblies. So we're gonna get those swapped out. I was starting to get some noise at speed, some kind of like a humming noise. Good indication that the wheel bearings are going out. So we're gonna put some new ones in. I'm gonna show you the process on how to get them onto the vehicle, get the old ones off, put the new ones on. So stick around. Hey guys, got a new merch store available with some hats, shirts, and other accessories. So if you want to pick up some cool swag and support the channel, go ahead and click that link in the description below. This is the whole new assembly that we got. This is from FAG. Bearing hub assembly, whole deal gonna get swapped out, and it does come with all new bolts. So you got the new axle bolt there, as well as the bolts to mount the hub assembly. First thing you're going to want to do is, before you get the vehicle up on jack stands, you're going to want to loosen the axle bolt. So depending on your wheel, go ahead and pop your center cap out, and then you can get your wrench on there and loosen it by about a 90-degree turn. That'll allow you, when you get the vehicle up on jack stands, the bolt will already be broken loose, and then you can get it all the way out. Car safely up on jack stands. You broke this one loose with the wheel on the ground. It's still going to be pretty tight getting it off. So you're going to want to get your breaker bar back out. If you stick a screwdriver down in the slot of the disc here, that'll actually prevent it from spinning. Or if you have someone else with you, they can just sit in the driver's seat and put their foot on the brake. That'll keep the assembly from spinning on you while you loosen this up. All right, there it is. Thought taking it out was fun. Just wait till you have to go back in and torque it down when you're putting everything back together. All right, with that axle bolt taken care of, getting to the wheel bearing hub assembly, you gotta get the rotor out of the way. In order to get that out of the way, you gotta move the caliper off to the side. So we're gonna have to take this clip off here. There's two screws in the back, the slider screws. Those are gonna have to come out, bolts rather. Those are going to have to come out, and then you can take the caliper off and rock it out of the way. You're going to want to use some safety wire or something to hang it up. You can hang it up on one of the coils of your spring or something, just so it's not dangling and putting pressure on the brake line. You definitely don't want to break that. So I'm going to get that out of the way. Just use a flat blade to kind of pry this off. Be careful when you're taking this off. There is pressure on it. So get that out of the way, then you can take those two bolts off the back. They're both going to have a little cover on it. Like this, so just pop that cover out, and then it's a 7mm hex to get in there and get those out. They shouldn't be torqued down too tight. I think the torque spec on it's like 22 inch-pounds, so nothing crazy. So just get them out by hand and then hang the caliper out of the way. Go, you can just hang that out of the way like so it's not causing any problems. Just make sure you're not crimping the brake line or anything. Like I said, definitely don't want to damage any part of that. But with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get the two bolts off the back side and get this caliper mounting bracket out of the way. All right, so on the back side here, you can see these holes here, there and there. That's where we took the caliper off of. The mounting bracket still needs to come off, so that big bolt there and then the one up top, that's a 21mm. So those are going to be snugged up pretty decent. So just get your breaker bar out, kind of wiggle it in there, and then break them loose and then pull them off. And then this whole, with both those off, this whole caliper mounting bracket will come away from the hub assembly. Alright, there's the bracket away from the vehicle. Now holding the rotor on, you got the one Torx bit here, so we're going to have to take that out and we can pull the rotor off of the hub assembly. And then with that screw out of the way, the whole rotor just comes away from the vehicle. Alright, that rotor out of the way, you're going to have to get behind it. This is your ABS wheel speed sensor. This is bolted directly into the bearing and hub assembly. You can see that there is a screw right below it there, little hex head. You'll have to disconnect the sensor here, little prong at the top. Just push in on the connector, pull back on that prong, and then the whole thing should release and slide out. And then just get in there with a hex head, get that bolt out, and then you can pull the whole sensor out of the way. Might make your life easier accessing that wheel speed sensor if you just take the dust cover off. That'll give us a little bit more access to do all this stuff. These are just 3 T30 bolts. You should be able to access them without pulling the hub off. So just get a T30 with an extension or something. You should be able to get in there and get them. There we go. Now you can see how much more room you got to get to the sensor over here. Just this guy right here, because we definitely don't want to break it. But you can see how stuck in there it is. That's what it looks like out. You got this whole unit in there, which you can see I ended up cracking. So that's gonna have to get replaced. Like I said, you want to be careful. This is old brittle plastic, so I'm probably gonna have to end up ordering a new one of these, but you can see all the rust around there. That's pretty much what was holding it up. But it's just got these little flanges on the sides there that just pressure fit it into that hole. So be careful, don't do what I did and break it. But depending on how old it is and how much rust is in there, this is the original setup on here. The car's got 167,000 miles on it. So stuff like this does happen, but just try to be careful with it. Try not to break it. Try not to put too much side force on it. You just want to get up there and try to go as straight out from the bearing hub assembly as possible. Disappointing. With all that disconnected, it's pretty much time to get this bearing assembly away from the vehicle. The reason we undid the axle bolt here is because you got to push the CV joint, drive shaft, the axle, as close to the engine as possible. Easiest way to do this is probably going to be to disconnect your lower ball joint here on the control arm. Drop the lower control arm down. That way you can try to swing that axle all the way out and kind of get it off to the side. So I did get the axle out. Gives you a lot more clearance in here to work. You can probably pick that up on camera, it's pretty loud. That's why we're replacing it. But these bolts are all rusted and seized in place, so I'm gonna do my best to get them out of here, so bear with me.
Ever heard of it? WD-40?
Got those 4 bolts loosened. I haven't pulled them all the way out yet. I'm going to reconnect the lower control arm and just loosely put those bolts on. That way when I'm prying on the wheel bearing to get it out from the carrier, it's not moving around like this. Now the fun part of getting this away, either get a pry bar in there when you get a gap, or I left those bolts loose. If you can get back there with a dead blow, you might be able to hit those bolts and kind of break it free. It is going to be obviously metal on metal, so it's going to be rusted together, but just do your best and work it away. Alright, it's off. That was kind of a pain just because of all the rust. This was originally a Michigan car. So when I bought it several years ago, it had only been in Arizona for a few years, and it's a 2010. So a lot of rust in there. You can see all the rust inside there. WD-40 is your friend, and I actually ended up using my ball joint separator, using the butt end of it here. I was able to get behind it on some spots to grab the bearing and then the housing. and then just put the impact on it and just help separate it. So I just worked side to side, got it separated and pulled off. That was my way to do it. If you guys aren't as rusted as that, it'll probably come off a lot easier. But little tip for you, if you have a ball joint separator, that should come in handy for things other than doing ball joints. With that out, there's going to be a lot of rust and buildup in here. What you're going to want to do is take your wire brush or some sandpaper or something, clean that out, spray it down with some brake cleaner, clean it out, clean up that surface and prep it the best we can for putting the new hub assembly in. All that cleaned up, we can go ahead and put the new bearing assembly in. It's just going to slide in here. Doesn't really matter what orientation it goes in. So it's going to slide in here. We're going to use the new bolts that came with the kit. We're going to put them in. We're just going to loosely hand tighten them. You're going to have to, if you need to seat this in all the way, just gently tap it with a hammer to set it in. And then we're going to loosely put the screws in, and those get torqued to 52 foot-pounds plus an additional 90-degree turn. So we'll work them all in, torque them initially, and then we'll do the 90-degree turn when they're all done. Alright, we got the initial torques back on them, so now I just need to get in there and get an extra 90-degree turn on all of them. I did, 4-bolt, best star pattern you could do, just to kind of help seat it properly. Those are a kind of a ball seat bolt that's going into it, so it should center it completely when it brings it into the carrier. But that's the new one on there. Pretty silent compared to the old one that we took off. So I'm going to go ahead and do the additional 90-degree turn, and then we can start buttoning everything up with the ball joint and getting the brake system back on. Alright, new wheel hub's in, so now we just got to button everything up, get it back to where we can put the wheel back on it. So that means putting all the brake system back onto it, starting with the heat shield. So those bolts are going to get torqued to 9 foot-pounds. When you put your ABS wheel speed sensor back in, that gets torqued to 6 pounds. I really recommend torquing that down and not overdoing it. If you overdo the torque on that, you can break the housing and ruin the wheel speed sensor. So definitely torque that one down to 6 foot-pounds. And then we'll start working our way back out, getting the rotor on, getting the brake carrier housing on, and the caliper. First thing I'm going to do is going to slide this drive shaft back in, slide the axle back in, and then get the lower ball joint back on the lower control arm. These bolts here just get torqued to 44 foot-pounds, and then if you haven't already, you can put a little bit of anti-seize on the spline of the axle there. That'll help it slide in and out of the hub assembly, and especially for future use if you have to take it back out. It'll be a lot easier. I've already got some on there, so I'm just going to slide it back in, but you can put a little bit of anti-seize on there. Don't overdo it, just a little bit. It doesn't take much. But we're going to slide that in and then get this all situated back on the lower control arm. Those in, I'm just going to start working on, like I said, getting the brake system back on. You can put your wheel speed sensor in now. If it's it's easier for you before you do the dust shield. But like I said, 6 foot-pounds on that bolt. Don't overdo it. You want to be careful. Like I showed you before, this thing's probably not going to focus on it, but there's a little crack in this one. I have one on order. I'm actually going to leave mine out for now, just till I get that one in on order. So when mine comes in, I'll just pop it in and everything will be fine. You can clear that hole out with some brake cleaner or something if you want to, just because there's going to be a little bit of rust in there. And I'm going to clean up the top surface with a wire brush. That'll just make things easier down the road, make life easier for you. But be very careful with these. It is plastic housing around these sensors, so you definitely don't want to over torque the bolt, and you want to go straight down into the hole. You don't want to do it cockeyed or anything, because you can crack them like I did on this one pulling out. On the other side, I got it out just fine without breaking it. So this one I think was just old and brittle and didn't like me. Alright, now it's time for the caliper mounting bracket. They do get torqued to 140 foot-pounds.
Click, click, boom.
That done, we're almost done here. We just gotta hang our caliper back on here with those 2 slider bolts, which are these guys here. Those little guide pins go into 22 foot-pounds. So like I said, just put some anti-seize or some lubricant on them when you're putting them in. They're supposed to be lubricated when installed. And when you got those torqued down, which I think I moved the camera, you probably just see it. Hey! Both slider bolts in. Always make sure to put those dust cover caps back in. Just gonna keep debris and stuff out of there, making sure everything's functioning properly. With that on, you can get the wire retaining bracket on for the front side caliper. This is a little bit tricky, so just play around with it, because you got to line up these holes on the top and bottom here, and also have the flaps on these flat spots here. So you just kind of got to work with it. It's a little bit of a spring-loaded tension, so flat-bladed screwdriver is going to come in handy a little bit. You might not be able to get by just by hand, or if you're talented like me, just like that. Voila! Your brakes are on. At this point, it's just one final rinse down of your brake rotors. Make sure they're nice and clean. That way your brakes are functioning properly and nice and quiet. And then we are ready to put the old axle bolt back in, which is a process on its own. So that'll be fun. The last thing to do really is to get the new axle bolt in. These are one-time use, so make sure you have an axle bolt when you're doing this. These are stretch bolts, so once you pull them out, you don't want to use them. So the axle bolt we're using on this one is a non-ribbed version, so smooth mating surface here, mating against the bearing assembly here. So this is going to get torqued to that 148 foot-pounds plus an additional 180 degrees. First stage we're going to do with the vehicle up in the air. Second stage we'll do with it on the ground. That way we don't damage the wheel bearing. If you do it all on the ground, you're going to damage the wheel bearing, and we don't want to do that. Does anyone else notice that I get pretty long-winded when I'm talking about stuff like this? Do I talk too much or do I talk not enough? Let me know down in the comments. First stage done, did it with the torque wrench. Now we'll get the wheel on it, get it on the ground, and then we'll do that final 180-degree turn to really tighten it up. Car's back on the ground, wheel lug bolts are all torqued up. Everything's good to go. I did put a little chalk on this side, opposite on the other side, because you're gonna be going obviously clockwise to tighten that axle bolt. If you do have a pipe or something to put to give an extension on the handle on your breaker bar, go ahead and do that just to get as much leverage on it as you can, and then do your best to get as much of that 180-degree turn on it. 290s equal 180, right? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. All right, guys, we did it. Got those new wheel bearings in, nice and freshened up. Not gonna be making any noise anymore. Make sure you do torque down your lug bolts on your wheels. Take it for a test drive, make sure it's not driving weird, doing anything crazy, and then head to the alignment shop so they can at least put it on the rack and check the specs of the alignment. If they need to make any adjustments, they can go ahead and do it at that time. You were messing with the suspension, so always a good idea to have it checked out. That way you're not getting any abnormal tire wear or having it, you know, pulled one way or the other. But yeah, as long as that goes well, you are done. You've done it yourself, and you had some fun while you were at it. So, hope you like this video. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you got anything to say. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Make sure to hit subscribe while you're down there too.